Hook. Damien Brooks walked into the luxury gala with his new wife beside him, ready to humiliate the woman he once called a failure. But seconds later, the entire ballroom froze because the broken ex he came to mock secretly owned the company hosting the event. Before we continue this emotional story with its shocking truth and unexpected ending, subscribe to Frock Cinema for more powerful real-life inspired stories like this. Chapter 1. The Woman He Thought Was Nothing. Rain tapped softly against the giant glass windows of Elena Hayes' penthouse while the city glowed beneath her like a sea of diamonds. The apartment was silent, peaceful, but Elena knew peace was expensive, and she had paid for hers with heartbreak. She stood in front of the mirror, calmly adjusting the sleeve of her black dress. No flashy jewelry, no dramatic makeup, just elegance. Simple, controlled, dangerously calm. 5 years ago, this same woman had cried herself to sleep in a tiny apartment after her husband walked away from her. Tonight, that same husband was downstairs in the city, preparing to see her again. But wait, Damien Brooks had no idea who Elena had become, and that was exactly why tonight was going to destroy him. Her phone buzzed softly on the marble table beside her. "Your car is waiting, Ms. Hayes." Elena picked up the phone, stared at the message for a second, then placed it back down quietly. No reply. That was one thing success taught her. Not every message deserves a response. She walked slowly toward the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. Her movements were calm, but deep down, memories had already started waking up. Painful memories, the kind that never fully disappear. Especially memories connected to Damien Brooks. Back then, Damien wasn't rich. He was ambitious, confident, charming, the kind of man who could make people believe anything if he smiled long enough. And Elena believed him more than anyone. She believed in his dreams. She believed in his future. She believed in him even when the rest of the world didn't. That became her first mistake. They met years ago before the luxury lifestyle, before the interviews, before the expensive suits and billionaire friends. Back when life was simple, they lived in a small apartment with weak electricity and noisy neighbors. Damien worked endlessly on business ideas, while Elena worked overtime shifts to help support them both. And she never complained. Not once. If Damien needed money for meetings, Elena found a way. If he needed encouragement, she stayed awake listening to him for hours. If he felt like quitting, she reminded him why he started. She loved him completely. And for a while, Damien loved her too. At least she thought he did. But success changes some people slowly. First, Damien became busier, then colder, then embarrassed by her. At first, it was small things, correcting how she spoke at events, telling her not to talk too much around investors, suggesting she wear something more elegant. Tiny comments, tiny wounds. But over time, tiny wounds become permanent scars. Elena still remembered the first moment she realized Damien had changed. They were leaving a business dinner one night when Damien suddenly sighed heavily beside her. "You really don't fit into these rooms." The words hit harder than shouting ever could. She looked at him quietly. "What does that mean?" Damien adjusted his expensive watch impatiently. "It means these people are different." Different. That word stayed inside Elena's chest for weeks. Because suddenly, Damien acted like success belonged to him alone, as if she hadn't suffered beside him during the hardest years. But she stayed, because love makes people tolerate things they should never accept. Then came Sabrina Brooks. Beautiful, young, elegant, the perfect woman for Damien's new billionaire image. At first, Damien claimed Sabrina was just part of his business circle. Then he started coming home later, answering calls outside, smiling at his phone more than his wife. And deep down, Elena already knew. Still, she stayed longer than she should have. Because sometimes people hold on to love long after love has stopped holding on to them. Then came the night everything ended. Damien walked into their apartment after midnight smelling like expensive cologne and champagne. He looked irritated before he even spoke. "Elena, we need to talk." She remembered how cold the room suddenly felt. Damien loosened his tie slowly. "I can't do this anymore." Elena stared at him. "Do what?" this marriage. Those words shattered something inside her instantly. But wait, the next thing he said hurt even more. You're holding me back. Holding me back. After everything she sacrificed for him, after all the nights she worked extra shifts while he built his future, after choosing his dreams over her own, suddenly she became the burden. That night, Elena didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't throw things. She just stood there silently while the man she loved packed his expensive suits into black luggage bags. And somehow, that silence hurt more than anger. The divorce happened quickly after that. And unfortunately for Elena, the internet loved the story. Business blogs covered every detail, especially after Damien appeared publicly with Sabrina only weeks later. People online called them the perfect power couple. Meanwhile, rumors about Elena spread everywhere. Some said she had a breakdown. Others claimed Damien left because she was too ordinary. And the worst part? Damien never corrected any of it. He let people believe she was weak, broken, forgettable. That became his biggest mistake. Because while Damien enjoyed attention, Elena disappeared quietly. And in silence, she rebuilt herself. The first year after the divorce nearly destroyed her. Some nights she cried until sunrise. Some mornings she couldn't even leave bed. Because heartbreak doesn't disappear just because someone betrays you. But pain changes people. And eventually, Elena stopped crying, stopped begging life to be fair, stopped explaining herself. Instead, she started building business investments, property deals, luxury hospitality projects, quiet partnerships. One smart decision became another, then another, and before the world realized what happened, Elena Hayes became one of the most powerful women in the luxury hospitality industry. Quietly, without attention, without interviews, without revenge speeches. And tonight, everything Damien ignored was finally standing in front of him. Her assistant knocked softly. "Ms. Hayes, we should leave." Elena grabbed her black coat, slowly, and stepped toward the elevator. As the doors closed, she looked at her reflection one last time. Calm face, steady eyes, silent confidence. No anger, no fear, because the woman Damien abandoned years ago no longer existed. The black car stopped outside the massive downtown hotel moments later. Camera flashes exploded everywhere. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Famous politicians, wealthy investors, and celebrities filled the red carpet beneath golden lights. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers sparkled across hundreds of powerful guests. And standing proudly near the center of the room was Damien Brooks. One hand wrapped around Sabrina's waist, laughing, smiling, showing off, exactly where he loved to be. Then suddenly, his eyes moved across the room casually and froze. The smile vanished from his face instantly because Elena Hayes was standing there, elegant, calm, untouchable. Sabrina noticed Damien's expression immediately. What's wrong? But Damien couldn't answer because for the first time in years, he looked afraid. And neither of them realized yet. Tonight was about to ruin everything Damien thought he controlled. Chapter 2. The night started turning against him. The music inside the ballroom continued softly. Champagne glasses clinked. Powerful people laughed beneath the crystal chandeliers. But near the center of the room, Damien Brooks could barely hear any of it anymore, because Elena Hayes was standing only a few feet away. And somehow, she looked more powerful than everyone else in the building, without even trying. Sabrina followed Damien's stare carefully. Her perfectly shaped smile tightened slightly. "That's Elena?" Damien swallowed slowly. "Yeah." Sabrina looked Elena up and down quietly. There was confusion in her eyes now, because this wasn't the broken woman Damien described. Not even close. Elena looked calm, elegant, dangerously composed, like someone who no longer needed approval from anyone, and that unsettled Damien immediately. But wait, the worst part hadn't happened yet. Across the ballroom, a few guests had already started whispering. "Is that Elena Hayes? I thought she disappeared. She looks incredible." Damien heard every word, and each whisper irritated him more, because, in his mind, Elena was supposed to stay in the past. forgotten, invisible, not standing here looking untouchable while powerful people slowly notice her arrival. Sabrina leaned closer to Damien. You said she never recovered after the divorce. Damien's jaw tightened. She didn't. But even he no longer sounded convinced. Meanwhile, Elena calmly accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server. No dramatic reactions. No uncomfortable expressions. Nothing. And somehow, that confidence bothered Damien more than anger ever could, because angry people still care. Calm people usually don't. Then something unexpected happened. One of the investors Damien had been trying to impress all night suddenly smiled toward Elena. Ms. Hayes. Damien's face changed instantly. The older businessman walked directly past Damien and Sabrina without hesitation, then warmly shook Elena's hand. It's good seeing you again. You too, Richard, Elena replied softly. Damien blinked. Richard Cole rarely greeted anyone personally, especially not like that. But wait, it got worse. Another executive approached, then another, then another. One by one, powerful guests started greeting Elena with respect. Real respect, not fake social smiles, not polite networking energy. Actual admiration. And Damien suddenly felt something uncomfortable growing in his chest. Confusion. Sabrina noticed it too. Why do all these people know her? Damien forced a laugh. She probably works for someone here. But deep down, even he knew that explanation sounded weak. Across the room, Elena remained calm through all of it. She smiled politely, shook hands gracefully, spoke softly, and never once looked desperate for attention. That silence slowly started making Damien nervous, because he remembered something important about Elena. She was never loud when she was emotional. She became quiet, and quiet Elena was dangerous. The orchestra music softened as more guests entered the ballroom. Suddenly, Sabrina touched Damien's arm carefully. She's looking at us. Damien turned, and there she was. Elena's eyes met his calmly from across the room. No bitterness, no sadness, just calm recognition. And strangely, that hurt Damien more than hatred would have. Because for years, Damien secretly imagined Elena still crying over him somewhere. Still broken, still angry, still emotionally attached. But the woman standing across the ballroom looked completely free. That realization hit harder than expected. Sabrina forced a smile. Well, aren't you going to say hello to your ex-wife? Damien hesitated for half a second. That was unusual for him. Damien Brooks never hesitated. Then finally, he adjusted his jacket confidently. Of course. The moment he started walking toward Elena, several guests quietly turned to watch. People sensed tension immediately. Rich people love drama, especially elegant drama. Sabrina stayed close beside him, her heels clicking softly across the polished floor. Meanwhile, Elena remained perfectly calm, almost like she already knew this moment was coming. Damien stopped directly in front of her. For one brief second, nobody spoke. The silence itself felt heavy. Then Damien smiled, but the smile looked forced. Elena, she nodded politely. Damien. Sabrina stepped forward immediately with a bright social smile. It's so nice finally meeting you. Elena looked at her calmly. You too. Simple, polite, controlled. But somehow Sabrina suddenly felt uncomfortable anyway, because Elena wasn't reacting the way most women would. No jealousy, no bitterness, nothing. And that made Sabrina uneasy. Damien cleared his throat. You look different. Elena gave a faint smile. People usually change after 5 years. The word sounded harmless. But Damien felt the hidden meaning immediately. Sabrina laughed lightly. Well, Damien always said you preferred staying away from all this luxury attention. Elena slowly lifted her champagne glass. Did he? Something about her tone made Sabrina glance toward Damien quickly. And for the first time that night, Sabrina noticed something strange. Damien looked nervous. Not angry. Nervous. But wait, what happened next made everything worse. A hotel manager suddenly rushed toward Elena, clearly stressed. Ms. Hayes, the board members are asking for you upstairs before presentation. Damien frowned instantly. Ms. Hayes? Board members? The manager continued quickly. They said they can't begin without your approval. The air around them suddenly changed. Sabrina blinked. What presentation? The manager looked confused for a second. The acquisition announcement. Then his expression shifted slightly, as if realizing he said too much. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Elena smiled calmly. It's fine. The manager nodded respectfully before walking away quickly, but the damage was already done. Damien stared at Elena carefully now. Acquisition? Board approval? None of this made sense. Sabrina looked between them. Wait, what acquisition? Elena calmly placed her champagne glass onto a passing tray. Then finally, she looked directly at Damien, and for the first time all night, a small mysterious smile appeared on her face. You really don't know why you were invited tonight? Damien's stomach tightened instantly, because suddenly he realized something was very wrong, but he still didn't understand how wrong yet, and unfortunately for him, the truth was already getting closer. That was the moment everything started falling apart. Chapter 3. The Secret He Never Saw Coming. Damien stared at Elena silently. The noise of the ballroom faded into the background. His mind kept replaying her words again and again. You really don't know why you were invited tonight. Something about the way she said it unsettled him deeply. Not arrogant, not emotional, just calm. And somehow, that calmness terrified him more than anger ever could. Sabrina crossed her arms slowly. Damien, what is she talking about? Damien forced a quick smile. Probably some small investment project. But even he didn't believe his own answer anymore, because suddenly, pieces around him were no longer fitting together. The board members, the respect, the hotel manager calling her Ms. Hayes, the investors greeting her personally. None of it made sense. No, impossible. Elena couldn't be involved at that level. Could she? But wait, the next few minutes would completely destroy everything Damien believed. A voice suddenly echoed across the ballroom speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, the presentation will begin shortly. The lights dimmed softly. Guests slowly moved toward the center stage area. Massive digital screens lit up around the ballroom, displaying the logo of the luxury hospitality company hosting the gala. Damien adjusted his tie carefully, trying to regain control of himself. This was his world. Business, power, public image. He understood these rooms better than anyone. At least, that's what he thought. Sabrina leaned closer. You okay? Of course. But sweat had already started forming near Damien's collar. Across the room, Elena was speaking quietly with several executives, and every single one of them treated her like someone important, very important. Then suddenly, one older woman approached Elena warmly and hugged her. You built all of this beautifully. Built? Damien's heartbeat slowed strangely. No way. His thoughts started racing now. What exactly had Elena been doing all these years? And why did nobody tell him? The lights dimmed further. A spotlight illuminated the main stage. Then the host appeared, smiling confidently. Good evening, everyone. Tonight is a very special night for Brooks Global Charity Gala. Applause filled the room. Damien smiled automatically for the cameras nearby. Public image first. Always. The host continued speaking dramatically about growth, partnerships, and luxury expansion projects. Most guests listened casually. But Damien's attention stayed locked on Elena, because something inside him kept whispering the same dangerous thought. You underestimated her. Then suddenly, the host smiled wider. And tonight, we also celebrate the woman responsible for saving this company 3 years ago. Damien frowned slightly. The giant screen behind the stage changed instantly. A photograph appeared. An old abandoned hotel building during renovation. Dust everywhere. Broken walls. Construction workers moving through damaged hallways. And then another image appeared. Elena Hayes standing inside the unfinished building years earlier. The entire ballroom erupted into surprised whispers. Damien's face lost color instantly. No, No, the host continued proudly. When investors abandoned this company during financial collapse, one person saw potential where others saw failure. Another photo appeared. Elena at business meetings. Elena signing contracts. Elena beside world-class executives. Sabrina slowly turned toward Damien. You said she disappeared. Damien couldn't speak, because a shocking truth was finally unfolding in front of everyone. And then the host smiled toward the stage entrance. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the owner and CEO of Valor Luxury Group. A pause. Then the words that shattered Damien completely. Elena Hayes. Silence. Complete silence. Damien's entire body froze as every head in the ballroom turned toward Elena. And slowly, gracefully, she walked toward the stage. But that wasn't even the worst part. Chapter 4. The moment his world started collapsing. The ballroom stood completely silent as Elena Hayes walked toward the stage. Every camera turned toward her instantly. Every whisper stopped. Even the orchestra had gone quiet. And near the center of the room, Damien Brooks looked like a man watching his entire reality break apart in real time, because the woman he once called ordinary had just been introduced as the owner and CEO of one of the fastest-growing luxury companies in the country. But wait, the humiliation was only beginning. Elena stepped onto the stage calmly. No dramatic expression, no revenge smile, no emotional speech, just confidence. The kind of confidence that only comes from surviving pain privately. The spotlight settled softly across her black dress, while the giant screens behind her displayed images of luxury hotels, international partnerships, and billion-dollar acquisitions, all under one name, Elena Hayes. The room erupted into applause. Real applause, not polite social clapping. People stood. Investors smiled proudly. Executives nodded with respect. And Damien? He couldn't move. Sabrina slowly looked at him. You lied to me. Damien swallowed hard. No, But he couldn't finish, because for the first time in years, he had absolutely no control over the situation. Elena reached the microphone calmly. Thank you all for being here tonight. Her voice was soft, steady, elegant, and somehow that made everything worse for Damien. Because she wasn't trying to embarrass him. She didn't need to. Reality was already doing it for her. Elena continued speaking naturally. 3 years ago, this company was close to collapse. Most people believed it was impossible to save. The screen showed old photos of the damaged properties again. Broken hallways, dark rooms, abandoned buildings. Then new images appeared. Luxury resorts, 5-star hotels, international business expansions. The transformation was unbelievable. But sometimes, Elena continued quietly, people give up on things too quickly, simply because they can't see their future value yet. Those words hit Damien like a punch, because deep down, he knew she wasn't talking about the company anymore. She was talking about herself. And suddenly, every painful memory came rushing back. You don't belong in these rooms. You're holding me back. The divorce papers, the humiliation, the silence after he left. And now, the same woman he abandoned was standing above him while the entire room admired her. That realization started crushing him slowly from inside. But wait, it got worse. A business reporter suddenly raised a hand from the audience. Ms. Hayes, many people are shocked by your success because you disappeared from public life after your divorce from Damien Brooks. Was that period difficult for you? The room became awkward instantly. Everyone looked between Elena and Damien. Even Sabrina turned carefully. The tension in the air became unbearable. Damien's chest tightened because he suddenly realized something terrifying. Elena now controlled the room completely. One sentence from her could destroy him publicly forever. And for the first time in years, Damien looked afraid, but Elena simply smiled softly. Then she answered calmly. Pain changes people. The ballroom stayed silent. Elena continued. Some people let pain destroy them. A pause. Others let it rebuild them. Another silence. No bitterness. No anger. No insults. Just truth. And somehow, That truth embarrassed Damien more than public humiliation ever could. People started clapping again, louder this time. Even Sabrina joined slowly. But while everyone admired Elena, Sabrina's expression toward Damien had started changing completely, because suddenly, nothing about Damien's story made sense anymore. He told her Elena was emotionally unstable, weak, dependent, but the woman standing on that stage looked stronger than everyone else combined. So, what else had Damien lied about? That question quietly entered Sabrina's mind, and unfortunately for Damien, it wasn't leaving anymore. Elena stepped away from the microphone as applause filled the ballroom again, but then something unexpected happened. The chairman of the company walked onto the stage, smiling proudly. And before night ends, he announced, "We'd also like to recognize the visionary leadership behind our newest acquisition." Another giant logo appeared across the screens. Brooks Global Holdings. Damien's face changed instantly. No way. The chairman continued speaking happily. This acquisition will officially finalize tonight under Valor Luxury Group. The ballroom exploded into shocked whispers. Sabrina looked confused. What does that mean? Damien's throat tightened painfully, because suddenly he understood everything. Elena wasn't just successful. She was buying his company. The very company Damien spent years building. And she was doing it publicly, in front of everyone. But wait, here's where everything truly changed. The chairman smiled warmly toward Elena again. Ms. Hayes generously insisted that current employees keep their positions after the transition. The audience applauded, but Damien barely heard any of it anymore, because one horrifying thought kept repeating inside his head. He worked years to become powerful, only to end up standing beneath the woman he once discarded. His breathing became uneven, his chest felt tight, and beside him, Sabrina slowly pulled her hand away from his arm, not dramatically, quietly, but Damien noticed immediately. He looked at her quickly. "Sabrina?" She stared at him carefully. "You told me she was nothing without you." Those words hit harder than anything else that night, because suddenly Damien realized the image he built for years was collapsing around him piece by piece, and there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop it. Across the ballroom, Elena finally looked toward Damien again, still calm, still elegant, still unreadable, and somehow that silence destroyed him more than revenge ever could, because Elena didn't need to prove anything anymore. Her success already said everything. What happened next, no one was prepared for her. Chapter 5. The truth he spent years running from. The applause slowly faded across the ballroom, but the tension remained heavy, painfully heavy. Damien stood frozen beneath the golden chandelier lights, while whispers spread around the room like wildfire. People were staring now, not at Elena, at him, and for the first time in his life, Damien Brooks looked small. Sabrina stepped slightly away from him, her expression colder now. "You let me believe she was obsessed with you," she whispered carefully. Damien rubbed his jaw nervously. "Sabrina, this isn't the time." "No," she interrupted softly. "This is exactly the time." That quiet sentence hit harder than shouting ever could, because Damien suddenly realized something dangerous. He was losing control of the only thing he truly cared about, his image. Meanwhile, Elena calmly stepped down from the stage while executives surrounded her proudly. Investors congratulated her. Business reporters rushed toward her. Camera flashes exploded everywhere. And somehow, the more successful Elena looked, the more ashamed Damien felt. But wait, the worst part still hadn't happened yet. A reporter suddenly approached Damien directly. "Mr. Brooks, did you know your former wife was acquiring Brooks Global Holdings tonight?" More cameras turned instantly. Damien forced a smile for the public. Business is unpredictable. Weak answer. And everyone knew it. Another reporter stepped closer. "How does it feel seeing Elena Hayes become one of the most powerful businesswomen in the industry after your divorce?" Damien's chest tightened. He hated this. Hated losing control. Hated becoming the uncomfortable story instead of the admired businessman. And deep down, he knew exactly why this hurt so much. Because Elena succeeded without him. No, Worse, she succeeded after him. That truth crushed his ego completely. Across the room, Elena noticed the reporters surrounding Damien. She could have ignored it. She probably should have. But something inside her finally shifted tonight. Not revenge. Closure. Years ago, Damien destroyed her confidence slowly. Not with violence. Not with screaming. But with humiliation. Tiny comments. Tiny insults. Tiny reminders that she wasn't good enough. And unfortunately, those wounds lasted longer than the marriage itself. But tonight, for the first time in years, Elena realized something important. Damien never actually made her weak. He only made her forget her strength temporarily. That realization changed everything inside her. A female reporter suddenly approached Elena carefully. "Ms. Hayes, many women online once saw your divorce as a public humiliation. What would you say to them now?" The ballroom became quiet again. Even Damien looked toward her, waiting, watching, hoping she wouldn't destroy him completely. Because she could, easily. Elena took a slow breath, then smiled faintly. "I'd say..." A pause. Never let someone else's inability to value you determine your worth. Silence. Pure silence. The words settled across the ballroom heavily. Some guests looked emotional, others thoughtful. And Damien? He felt like someone had quietly exposed every insecurity he spent years hiding. Because the shocking truth was finally impossible to ignore anymore. Damien didn't leave Elena because she lacked value. He left because success inflated his ego until he could no longer recognize loyalty when he had it. And now, he was finally understanding what he lost. Too late. Sabrina looked at Elena carefully now. Not with jealousy anymore. With respect. And strangely, that hurt Damien even more. Because the woman standing beside him was slowly admiring the woman he betrayed. Then came the final blow. One elderly investor stepped beside Elena, smiling proudly. "You know," he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "when Ms. Hayes bought her first property from us years ago, many people doubted her." He laughed softly. "Best investment decision we ever made." Several executives nodded immediately. Another businessman smiled. "She's one of the smartest negotiators I've ever worked with. And the most respected," someone else added. Respect. That word echoed painfully inside Damien's mind. Because money could attract attention. Power could attract fear. But respect? That had to be earned. And Elena earned it without destroying people on her way up. Unlike him, Damien suddenly realized something horrifying. He spent years chasing status, while Elena quietly became someone people genuinely admired. And in that moment, everything changed forever. Chapter 6. The Woman Who Walked Away Stronger. The ballroom slowly returned to life. Music started playing again. Waiters moved between guests carrying champagne trays. Conversations restarted beneath the golden lights. But for Damien Brooks, nothing felt normal anymore. Because in just one night, the image he spent years building had cracked wide open. And worst of all, the person who exposed it never even tried to humiliate him. Elena Hayes simply stood in her truth. And somehow, that hurt more. Damien loosened his ties slightly while watching Elena across the ballroom. She was smiling politely during conversations with investors and executives. Calm, confident, untouchable, no bitterness, no desperate need to prove herself, just quiet power. And suddenly, Damien remembered something painful. Years ago, Elena used to look at him that same way, with belief, with loyalty, with love. Back then, she would wait for him after long nights at work, encourage him when deals failed, remind him not to give up when nobody believed in his dreams. And he threw all of that away for ego, for status, for attention. That realization sat heavily inside his chest. Beside him, Sabrina finally spoke again. "You lied to me." Damien closed his eyes briefly. "Sabrina?" "No," she interrupted softly. "You made her sound weak." Damien looked down, because for once, he had no defense. Sabrina crossed her arms slowly while watching Elena from a distance. "She never once embarrassed you tonight." That sentence hit Damien hard, because it was true. Elena could have destroyed him publicly. She could have exposed every cruel thing he said after their divorce. Every rumor he allowed people to believe. Every disrespectful comment. But she didn't. And somehow, that grace made him feel even smaller. Sabrina shook her head slightly. The problem was never Elena. Damien looked at her carefully. But Sabrina's expression had already changed. The admiration she once had for him was fading. Fast. You spent years trying to look powerful, she continued quietly. But she actually became powerful. Silence. Painful silence. And Damien couldn't argue with a single word. Across the ballroom, Elena thanked another investor before finally stepping away from the crowd for a moment. She moved toward the large balcony overlooking the city lights outside. The cool night air touched her face softly. For the first time all evening, she exhaled deeply, not because she was nervous anymore, because something inside her had finally healed. But wait, one final conversation still remained. The balcony doors opened quietly behind her. Elena already knew who it was before turning around. Damien. For a second, neither of them spoke. The city lights reflected across the silence between them. Years of memories sat there quietly too. Good ones, painful ones, broken ones. Damien placed his hands into his pockets slowly. You look happy. Elena gave a faint smile. I worked very hard for my peace. That answer hurt him more than anger would have, because peace was something Damien no longer had. He looked down briefly before speaking again. I didn't know. Elena tilted her head slightly. Didn't know what? That you built all this. She stayed quiet for a second, then finally answered honestly. You never looked. Those 3 words shattered him completely, because deep down, Damien knew she was right. When they were married, he stopped seeing Elena long before he left her. He only saw what she lacked, never what she carried, never her loyalty, never her sacrifices, never her strength. And now, another room full of people could see it clearly while he failed to. Damien swallowed hard. I was cruel to you. The words sounded unfamiliar coming from him, almost uncomfortable. Elena looked out at the city again quietly. Yes, she said softly. No dramatic speech. No emotional explosion. Just truth. And somehow, that truth carried more weight than anything else tonight. Damien rubbed his jaw slowly. I thought success would make me happy. Elena finally looked at him again. And did it? He didn't answer immediately, because for the first time in years, Damien Brooks was being honest with himself. No cameras, no performance, no fake confidence, just honesty. And honesty terrified him. I kept chasing bigger things, he admitted quietly. More money, more status, more attention. A pause, but somehow it never felt enough. Elena listened silently, because she already understood something Damien was only learning now. Success means nothing when you lose yourself trying to reach it. Damien looked toward her carefully. I'm sorry. Another silence settled between them, and strangely, Elena realized she no longer needed that apology anymore. Years ago, she would have cried hearing those words. Tonight, they simply felt late. Not meaningless, just late. She smiled softly. I know. Damien's eyes lowered slightly. That calm forgiveness somehow broke him more than hatred ever could, because he finally understood the painful truth. Elena didn't need revenge. Life already gave her closure. And him? Life gave him regret. Inside the ballroom, cameras continued flashing while powerful guests celebrated Elena's acquisition. Meanwhile, on the balcony, one woman quietly reclaimed the last piece of herself. Elena adjusted her coat gently. I should get back inside. Damien nodded slowly, but before she walked away, he spoke one final time. Elena, she turned calmly. You deserve better than the way I treated you. The old Elena would have cried hearing that. But this Elena, she simply smiled faintly, then answered with quiet confidence. I know that now too. And with that, she walked away. Not angry, not bitter, not broken, just free. Damien stood alone on the balcony, watching her disappear back into ballroom lights. And for the first time in years, he finally understood what real loss felt like. Not losing money, not losing status. Losing someone who truly loved him before the world knew his name. Inside the ballroom, Elena was greeted with applause once again as investors surrounded her proudly. But this time, it felt different, because she no longer needed success to prove her worth. She already survived the hardest thing, being abandoned by someone she loved, and rebuilding herself anyway. The night slowly came to an end. Guests left one by one beneath the glowing city lights. But the story of Elena Hayes would spread everywhere after the night, not as Damien Brooks' ex-wife, but as a woman who turned pain into power without losing her grace. And maybe that was the most powerful revenge of all, because sometimes the people who try to break you accidentally force you to discover how strong you really are, and sometimes walking away quietly becomes the loudest victory. So tell us, what would you have done if you were Elena Hayes?